The concept of cable transfer impedance is an important one in the field of electromagnetic compatibility, or EMC. It greatly influences the susceptibility of a system to electromagnetic interference, or EMI. But what exactly is cable transfer impedance? Cable transfer impedance, which is generally represented by Z subscript T, is a metric which represents the ratio of the common mode current on a cable to the differential mode voltage which is induced across that cable. To demonstrate this, we can draw a lengthwise cross-section of a coaxial cable. The blue lines represent the outer or return conductor, and the red line represents the center conductor. If a common mode current I induces a differential mode voltage V, then the transfer impedance of this particular cable is defined by V divided by I. The length of the cable plays a role here. Therefore, transfer impedance is usually expressed per unit length, either as ohms per meter or decibel ohms per meter. This per length normalization allows for the transfer impedance of cables of different lengths to be compared. So how does transfer impedance work? To explain this, we can take a face-on cross-section of a coaxial cable. If the far end of this coaxial cable is connected to a standalone load and the center conductor is excited with current going into the page, then, in this example, the return conductor will conduct an equal current back to the source, indicated here as partial currents coming out of the page. Therefore, the total current going into the page will equal the total current coming out of the page. Now, anytime a current flows, a magnetic field is created. This is a fundamental law of physics that you cannot get around. Every component of the current which either enters or exits the page will have an associated magnetic field. This is where the trouble comes in. In an ideal scenario, the magnetic fields in the region between the center and return conductors would completely cancel each other out. In a real cable, however, this does not occur. The result is a net magnetic field in some regions, and when this net time-varying magnetic field cuts a conductive loop, a voltage is induced. Braided cables have a poorer transfer impedance than rigid or semi-rigid cables. This is because the current porpoises in and out of the braid, and this contributes to this imbalance in the magnetic fields. So how may this problem manifest? Suppose you have two electronic systems, system A and system B, which are connected with two coaxial cables, cable 1 and cable 2. Now, imagine a time-varying magnetic field caused by an external system which passes through the loop formed by the two systems and their interconnections. In this illustration, the magnetic field is passing into the page as indicated by the orange crosses. This induces a voltage which causes a current, an interference current, to flow in this loop. This illustrates one way a common mode current may be induced on the cables within an electronic installation. Should either cable 1 or cable 2 have a poor transfer impedance, then the proper operation of system A or system B may be disturbed. The principle of transfer impedance can be demonstrated with the following simple experiment. In this experiment, a signal generator is used to produce a common mode interference current. An oscilloscope is used as a receiver system. A cable is then attached to the signal generator, converting its BNC output port to a pair of crocodile clips. This experiment does not require the negative crocodile clip, so it is left disconnected. One end of a coaxial cable with a poor transfer impedance is then connected to the input channel of the oscilloscope. This cable is referred to as the cable under test. At the other end of this cable, the return conductor and the center conductor are soldered together. The positive crocodile clip is then connected to the soldered end of the coaxial cable. The signal produced by the signal generator will now force a common mode current to flow over the coaxial cable, which is connected to the oscilloscope. Now, you may be wondering how a common mode current may flow, especially since the negative crocodile clip is left disconnected. To have the full picture, the protective earth connection and the power cables leading to both the signal generator and the oscilloscope need to be considered. At the oscilloscope input, the return conductor is electrically bonded to the metallic chassis of the instrument, which is bonded to the protective earth and its power cable. There's also 1 megaohm resistance between the center conductor and the return conductor. Similarly, at the output port of the signal generator, the return conductor is electrically bonded to the metallic chassis of the instrument, which is in turn bonded to the protective earth connection and its power cable. The signal generator produces an output voltage with respect to this reference. Both instruments are plugged into electrical sockets that share a protective earth connection. This completes the loop, allowing a current to flow. Note that if the cable under test were to have a perfect transfer impedance, then no voltage would be induced across the cable and no waveform would appear on the oscilloscope screen. In the setup, 2 types of coupling will occur. The first is magnetic field or inductive coupling. This will occur due to the magnetic field imbalances described earlier. The second is resistive or common wire coupling. This occurs where 2 conductive loops share a common wire. A current flowing over one of these loops will result in a voltage drop across it due to the resistive nature of the cable. This voltage then causes a current to flow in the second loop. These 2 coupling mechanisms will both contribute to the waveform seen on the oscilloscope display. We now put this experiment into practice, configuring it as described. First, the signal generator is put into place. Then the oscilloscope is positioned. The signal generator is set to produce a 100 kHz square wave with a 15 volt peak-to-peak amplitude and a 50% duty cycle. For this experiment, a square wave excitation is preferred, as it will be rich in harmonic frequency content. Connecting a coaxial cable directly between the signal generator and the oscilloscope allows for the characteristics of the source waveform to be confirmed. Now, the direct coaxial cable is removed. At the signal generator end, the BNC to crocodile clip is connected. At the oscilloscope end, one side of the cable under test is connected. Remember, at the other end of this cable, the connector has been removed and the center conductor and the return conductor have been soldered together. The positive crocodile clip is then connected to the soldered together end. Zooming out, only a flat trace is visible on the oscilloscope's display. No voltage appears to be induced between the return and center conductors of the cable under test. Zooming in tells a different story. As the vertical scale is changed from 5 volt per division to 5 millivolt per division, a waveform emerges. This waveform has a peak-to-peak voltage amplitude exceeding 10 millivolt. In a perfect world, this would not be there. This waveform is a combination of 2 waveforms, the result of 2 different coupling mechanisms. The first mechanism is magnetic field coupling. This results in a series of positive and negative pulses, which are induced as the square wave current waveform from the signal generator changes polarity. This type of coupling is frequency dependent. Therefore, the contribution that this type of coupling makes to the overall waveform seen on the oscilloscope screen will change with the frequency of the interference waveform. The second mechanism is resistive or common wire coupling. This results in a square wave which is directly proportional to the current waveform produced by the signal generator. This type of coupling is frequency independent. Therefore, the contribution that this type of coupling makes to the overall waveform seen on the oscilloscope screen will not change with the frequency of the interference waveform. This concludes part 1 of our video explainer series on cable transfer impedance.